On this date, I did the strangest thing. Well, I did it. I closed all my social media accounts. Well, most of them. It feels very freeing because the amount of toxic cultures that are happening now, they've always been happening, but the amount that are happening now, as well as the lower return on investment, the ROI, for the people I want to serve, it makes perfect sense. Believe it or not, you can leave. Before you delete your own social media platforms, be sure and ask yourself these three important questions that can be the difference between success and failure. First question you want to ask is, where are my people? Where is my tribe? Where are the folks I'm trying to serve? If we're putting our time, our energy, and in a lot of cases nowadays, our money into a particular platform to be seen and to connect, then it makes no sense to invest more into it if it's like a ghost town. Now, platforms come and go, and depending on the audience you're trying to serve, they can move really quickly from one thing to another thing to another thing. You don't want to be building up your castles of sand on platforms that don't make any sense anymore. The second thing you want to do is consider a test run or a hiatus. The organizationalist Marie Kondo talks about this all the time, where if there's an item that you really like, but you're not sure if it's time to get rid of it or not, you can put it away for a few weeks, maybe even a few months. And if you don't miss it, you can get rid of it. If you miss it and you keep asking for it, you can pull it back out. Same thing with social media. There's one hiatus I took for a whole quarter, a whole business quarter. And I found that actually I didn't miss the platform. And a lot of people that I want to connect with, I was able to connect with on my own platforms, including my newsletter and other areas that I had built up over time. If you do decide to take a break, put in your bio and say, hey, I'm on hiatus. I'll see y'all in a little bit. See if there's little DMs or little messages that come. For a lot of the social media platforms, they will send you an email if there's a particular message that comes through. The third question you want to ask is, do and have I created my own pipeline? You have to own the pipeline to the people you want to connect with. Otherwise, if you're dependent on a social media platform, they can cut it off at any minute. And of course, you can't leave. As I've left the social media platforms, I built up my own platforms, including Bring Your Worth, my newsletter at joindamon.me, as well as connecting with people in real life, whether I'm doing keynotes, people going to book signings, or me going to conferences. You have to build your own pipeline, otherwise you have no way to connect with the audience that you're not going to be connecting with through the particular social media platforms you're planning on leaving. If you have a good answer to all three of these questions, it feels like you might be ready to cut the cord. And believe it or not, you can actually make a thriving business outside of social media. And I found that my business actually improved as I left social media platforms. Today we're going to talk about why I decided to permanently take my business off of Facebook. Now, Facebook happens to be a hot thing right now. You can apply this to any other social media though. I knew that in December, I believe of 2019, I shut it down. I was actually not one of the first people, but I was early on Facebook, mostly because of my friends in Silicon Valley were telling me to get on there. So I think I got on there around 2006 or so. And then by 2019, shut it down. I was done. I think my last day on there was December 3rd. But before then, I was very active on there. And I think there's some big lessons, three in particular. If you're thinking about having your business and putting your energy into a social media platform. Number one, when it came to Facebook, I realized that there was a low return on investment, What I mean by that is treating your time and your other resources just like you would money. So if you have a bad investment and you're putting all this money into it, you're gonna stop at a certain point. To give you some quick backstory, when I did my first major book, that was in 2008, I was just moving to Silicon Valley. That was around the time that Facebook was really starting to jump off, and I had been on there for a year or two. I used Facebook to leverage getting my book out and connect with people nationally and later on internationally, because it was a small book, it was a small publisher. We didn't have the bandwidth financially or otherwise to put me on book tour. And so I wanted to find another way to connect with this larger audience. Back then it worked great. Fast forward, I don't know, last 2-3 years, where I've come out with my book, Bring Your Worth. That came out just over 2 years ago. So it was February of 2019, earlier that year, before I quit Facebook. I went ahead and got involved with Facebook to launch this book. There wasn't a whole lot going on. And we can get into that, we'll get into that in the next point. But one of the things that happened is that there ended up being a bigger gap between the people I wanted to serve and the people that I was actually serving. if that makes sense. Let me try that again. There was a big gap between me and the people that I wanted to serve. And that gap got wider, actually because of the decisions that the platform was making. So when I did my thing in 2008, again with my first major book, then I put a message out there and it would get to everyone within my network. Then within that decade or so, then there started to be a gulf. And then they started asking, hey, chip in $1, you can reach more people. So they were actually what's called throttling the amount of people that I could contact. But it's not unique to Facebook. I don't want to just throw them under the bus. You find that with a lot of social networks where they'll get to a certain scale and then suddenly it starts messing with the spigot. And when that happens, you have to decide if you want to be involved. Now, if you're already able to impact your audience and connect with them, regardless of the changes that are being made, good for you. But if you're not feeling that with a platform, especially a new platform you're getting involved in, you might want to think about how much time you're investing in that. I'd rather put my investment in time and energy into other things, which I'll get into in a second. Number two, as I mentioned, I was being disconnected from the very people that I serve. I like the spigot analogy because at any time they can turn up or turn down the amount of people you're connecting. Imagine like having a brick and mortar store and then the city or the landlord that you're renting the storefront from or whatever, at any time they can go and say, okay, only 5 people can be on this sidewalk to walk by your place and only like 1 or 2 people can actually come in the store. But if you pay me a little bit extra rent this month, if you pay a little bit more extra taxes to the mayor or to the city or to the state or whatever, then maybe you can have 10 people come walk past and 5 people come into the store. That's what's happening on social media. Think about that. These are things that we would not accept, we would not be comfortable with. I know people that have brick and mortar places, they would not go for this at all. But we go for that every single day with social media. And that's becoming a lot more intense as we become more independent. I know one of the telltale signs, which always gave me shivers, was probably about 5-6 years ago, shortly after I left Silicon Valley. And there would be new startup businesses. And it was after I became an entrepreneur, but before I started coaching. So I couldn't give advice like that because I wasn't quite mature enough. But I knew something was wrong because I would see people who would be starting up businesses and their website would be just their Facebook page. What if something happens to Facebook? Then suddenly you can't connect with your customers. I went through this experience. Luckily not that, because I started my business way earlier in the era where Facebook actually wasn't around when I started my business. So it wasn't even an issue like that. I'm glad that wasn't even a choice for me as it was for a lot of folks that have been around for a decade or two. But my whole point is that there's a certain point where you're going to shift to owning your own property. So going from what I call a renter to being your own landlord, owning your own stuff. As I started to get off of Facebook, I beefed up my newsletter, and that's at joindamon.me. Joindamon.me is my newsletter. I do it it arrives every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, because I'm over here in Vegas. Every Wednesday, now it's been like 5 or 6 years consistently. And I was doing it much more erratically before, but consistently for several years now. Y'all have to learn to expect that. No one's gonna turn off the email. If the email's being turned off, there's something very wrong. And it's something wrong with everybody's email. So that email is mine. You're getting that directly from me. If you have a problem or if you really enjoy the message and the conversations that are happening at joindamon.me every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m., you can reply right back to me. There is no middleman or middlewoman or entity saying you can only access me so much. I can only access you so much. That's not even part of the conversation. Over the past year, my email list has doubled thanks to y'all getting more involved with it. But part of it is because I'm spending less time on social media and more building my own community through joindamon.me. Another thing that I'm doing is, in a meta way, talking to you right now. If you're hearing this for the first time or you're hearing it as a first run, as a premiere, then you're probably catching it on YouTube. My channel at youtube.com/BrownDamon. You can like, you can comment, you can share, and most importantly, you can subscribe. You can do that right now. And the YouTube guidelines are so broad that I don't have to worry about me being cut off from you. This is about as close as I can get, aside from building videos on my own website. This is as close as I can get to having my own channel. That's why I'm building up this YouTube community with you in mind. That's why I'm spending hours and hours on content, having these conversations that are usually reserved for my books or for my one-on-one coaching sessions, which cost a few $100s an hour. I'm giving them to you so that we can build this community. I'm not depending on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or TikTok or Snapchat. I can keep going. You could be listening to this video or watching this video 10 years from now. Replace the names and it's gonna be the same conversation. I was around when MySpace was popping. I remember when Friendster started, which was around the time I was in grad school. Same conversations. So again, if Facebook isn't popping right now when you're listening to this, then just replace it with another name, right? You always want to be the landlord. I am the landlord of joindamon.me. I'm the landlord of my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BrownDamon. Slight rental fee over to YouTube, but that's pretty much it. But definitely the joindamon.me, 100% mine. And it's about getting as close to ownership as possible so you don't have to worry about that. As I've talked about in other videos, particularly the ones about social media, there were times, particularly over the past year, where the conglomerate of Facebook, WhatsApp, it's not a city in Compton, Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram were completely down. There were times when Twitter was completely down. There were times when LinkedIn is down. I actually enjoy LinkedIn quite a bit. There were times when those guys were down during a pandemic. My book came out, Built From Now. This book came out January 28th, 2021. What if I was launching a book only on social media and it happened to be the time when it was down? I would have lost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of sales and opportunities. Instead, I had a launch on Instagram. I had a launch on Amazon Live. And you can check it out at amazon.com/shop/BrownDamon. I have an Amazon Live that I do there that comes over to this YouTube channel. I have my email list. They learned about it and pre-ordered it like 6 months before it hit the store. There's so many different ways that you can connect with people that have nothing or little to do with social media. That's you putting the keys, not even the keys, putting someone else in the driver's seat. Don't worry about the keys. I'm bad with analogies right now. Forgive me. Putting someone else in the driver's seat and saying, take me where I need to go. Instead, you need to be in the driver's seat. So even if you're working with social media, and there's nothing wrong with it, you can catch me on the social media. But I have my email list, I have this YouTube channel, I have my Amazon Live stuff. I have a lot of stuff that's going on that has nothing to do with leaning completely on third parties to connect with y'all. The third thing is how much of a distraction social media can be. And this has to do with your productivity. Cal Newport, I recently interviewed him for the Bring Your Worst show. You can catch it in the links, but it happened about 3 or 4 weeks ago based on his new book, A World Without Email. Now we talked a little bit about social media along with email, and the challenge is that we're not used to working in silence anymore. Back when I first started writing many years ago, then the internet was in its infancy. Smartphones didn't exist. I swear they didn't exist, right? People were still using home phones. And I'm not that old. So we're talking a few decades ago. There was no iPhone. There was barely Apple because, Steve Jobs at the time was kicked out of it. Apple wasn't even popping like that. So you had the opportunity to go to the library as a writer. You had the opportunity to go to the library and just write, or be in your home office or in your kitchen or whatever and just write. And that's it. If you want to be distracted, you go outside for a walk, or you call a friend, from your wall phone. The phones used to be in the wall phone, and say, hey, let's grab a coffee or a drink or something, right? That was the distraction. As Cal argues in it's a really good book, A World Without Email, now we have all these inputs. And it becomes worse with social media, and this is my layer on it. It becomes worse with social media because then suddenly you feel like you need to be posting on Facebook, posting on Instagram, posting on TikTok every single day to make an impact on your business. Do you feel like that's marketing? It might be, but so is sending an email to a client that you haven't heard from in a while and seeing if you want to work together and how you might be able to support them on their next act. Marketing is also giving a phone call to someone, I guess that'll be marketing, giving a phone call to someone and saying, hey, how can I support your business? I have a new book coming out. I'm happy to give it to you for free. That's marketing too. And so we're conflating social media with marketing. It can be an aspect of marketing, but they're not the same thing. Again, I come from an era before social media. So we were doing marketing without Facebook, without Twitter. We were doing that kind of marketing back when Mark Zuckerberg was in elementary school, I swear. And so we're confusing those two. Because of that, we're looking at that intimacy. We can connect with people. We can go ahead and say, I could do a YouTube video and connect with thousands of y'all. I can do my weekly newsletter, Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. over at joindamon.me and connect with a lot of y'all on an intimate level. Or I can do a quick social media post. And as we start to look at social media as marketing and just that being the only option that we have, then we start to dilute the impact that we're having, because we could have a more intimate and connected connection with the people that we're trying to serve. Furthermore, that time we're doing the next social media post, that's like a death by 1,000 cuts. And that quick, pithy post, you do a few of them a day, suddenly that's minutes, if not hours. And that's when you could be actually doing your work. So there's a distraction element of it. And I have to say, I'm approaching a year and a half off Facebook, and I am happy about it. Especially, man, I left it just before our pandemic year started. And whew. So as far as mental health, I'm so happy that I was able to avoid a lot of stuff that y'all on Facebook are going through. You have my sympathy and my empathy. I'm glad I left when I did. But again, it's not personal against Facebook. I just know Facebook isn't the place for me. And more importantly, it's not the place for my business. Go through that evaluation. You don't need to be everywhere at once. My impact is through this YouTube channel. My impact is through joindamon.me, my weekly newsletter. You can sign up there. My impact is through builtfromnowquiz.com, based on my new book, Built From Now. It's a free quiz that'll tell you your best resources. And my impact is through my ink column and a couple other things that I do. Ink is at inkdamonbrown.com. That's what I do. And as the world starts to open up, then I'll be doing more in-person keynotes. I'll be having coffees and drinks with people. I still look forward to that. And that will be part of how I impact people. But Facebook ain't it. I think you really need to think about if that platform is serving you in the way that you think it is. Rushing to have a bunch of people following you, a bunch of people buying your product, a bunch of people that you're trying to influence, there's no point in rushing that, because what you're gonna learn is the power of impact. You'll be able to get more insight as you move forward. My name is Damon Brown of DamonBrown.net. My main thing is helping you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, or otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. Today we're gonna talk about 2 Chainz, who you may never have heard of, but he's a very popular rapper. He's had multi-platinum albums, he's had a wonderful career. He also started off very, very small, as in a local talent down in Atlanta. He actually changed his name once or twice. He's had a long journey. He's about my age, so he's approaching midlife, and he's been in the business as a rapper and as a creator and as a business person for about 2.5 decades. So we have a lot of parallels here. The insight from 2 Chainz is priceless. In fact, as I said in my original column that I did for Inc. magazine, you can check it out at inkdamonbrown.com. This is something that Seth Godin would say. So if you think of Seth Godin and you think of 2 Chainz, you might not combine them together. I saw it though, I saw an interview with him. I think this is so brilliant. And what it's about is about creating something that will last with your business career and about serving people. If you want more insight like this, be sure to subscribe. And also check out the playlist. There's 3 or 4 playlists that are pretty popular, and you'll get more insight in regards to that. So this is what 2 Chainz said in a fabulous interview. For my longest, my goal was to get a fan a day. And sometimes it was that I was one song away because I was recording every single day. As an entertainer, you're always one thing away. I always knew that I was. You're always one thing away. He was focused on 1 fan a day. This is back when he was presumably broke. This is when he was selling CDs literally out of the trunk. I'm guessing down in Atlanta, which is where he's from. This is when he was recording every single day. Think about it. He might not have had a record contract. He might have been not sure how he was gonna pay his bills, but he's recording every single day. That commitment. There's lots of videos I've done on this channel about that. Again, you can subscribe to check those out. So we won't get into that part. What I want to focus on is the 1 fan a day. Number 1, It's all about the minimal viable audience. As I talked about in a recent video about getting press and why you don't really need it for whatever service you're trying to do, the minimal viable audience idea comes from Seth Godin. He is the founder of Akimbo and recently stepped away to do his own business and to let it go independent. You can learn more about him at akimbo.com. He's a brilliant marketer and he's an excellent teacher. And he talks about creating the minimal viable audience. Now, the minimal viable audience means you creating something and engaging with the smallest people possible. Not short, but the smallest audience. If you're creating an app, which I've done a couple in the past, I ended up selling the last one that I did. If you're writing a book, if you're creating music, if you're, now that we're starting to get out of sheltering in place, if you're having concerts and you're engaging with the audience, with your singing or your guitars or whatever, your slam poetry, don't worry about crowding everyone in and getting, Wembley Stadium in there. Focus more on the individuals. If you do that, there's a few big benefits that come from it. Number one, you're able to figure out what kind of impact your art, your creation is having on the audience. Once you get to a certain scale, you don't know. I remember my first major book came out. It was about the history of sexuality in video games called Porn and Pong. You can look it up. Came out about 13, 14 years ago. Other books of mine that came out, but that was my first. That was like my baby. I remember going down to New Orleans, which is where I used to live, but it was after I moved from there. Went down with my girlfriend, now wife. We ended up having a book signing in my old neighborhood, or right outside of my old neighborhood in the Farborough Marigny. If you're down there, you know where that is. And 3 people came. Literally 3 people. So we had other business in New Orleans, but I flew all the way down. I think I was in California at the time. Flew all the way from California to New Orleans to have a book signing for my first major book. 3 people came. One of them might have been my wife. I can't remember, but it was definitely 3 people, right? And I gave my all. And it was great. Fast forward years later, I'm doing keynotes, and I had one last year, I had 1,000 people in the crowd, but I knew how to talk to them. I talked to them as individuals. I talked to them not as this lump sum of 1,000 people. I knew what kind of impact my work made on them. In fact, that's part of what made me a keynoter a few times last year, is I knew how to talk to them individually. That's what 2 Chainz is talking about. That's what Seth Godin is talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You're creating for one. There's not gonna be 10 million people reading this book at the same time. I look forward to that. But at the end of the day, it's gonna be you and me. You reading this book and me inside of it. Literally. That's it. So at the end of the day, when I've had my bestsellers, and I've had a few, or I've had my modest hits, or I've had ones that were goose eggs, and I've had some books that flopped, it still ends up being the same process. That's what 2 Chainz is talking about. At the end of the day, it's always gonna be a fan a day. Your influence is always gonna be one-on-one, no matter what you create. I'm cool with, friends with, have talked to at a distance from some of the best-selling authors within the space that I talk about, with thought leadership, entrepreneurship, business. I don't even have to name them. We all are doing the same thing. I know them. We have coffee together. We have a drink together. We have lunch together. I've seen them speak and then, giving them props after their keynotes. We're all doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing I was doing in New Orleans more than a dozen years ago when I was talking to 3 people. They're talking to 3,000. Some of them are talking to 30,000. We're all having the same experience. And so you rushing to have a bunch of people following you, a bunch of people buying your product, a bunch of people that you're trying to influence, there's no point in rushing that, because what you're gonna learn is the power of impact. You'll be able to get more insight as you move forward. One of the challenges too, if you're going for the big audiences, which 2 Chainz knew really early, is that if your stuff is for everybody, that means it's for nobody. We find this a lot in the coaching space. We find this a lot in the creative space, particularly with writing, where if you're writing a book and someone says, who's your book for? This book? This is for people who are trying to make impact, who have limited resources, over-mentored and underappreciated, who aren't sure, they know what kind of impact they want to make, but they're not sure if they can actually make the impact. So they need to create a framework to build with that, to build from now. and they're not exactly sure how to do it, this is going to give them the framework for it. They have a passion about something, I'm going to help them build from now based on the resources they have, no matter where they are in the world. That sure as hell isn't everybody. But there's so many times when we'll create something and you might ask, well, who's it for? Well, it's for everybody. No, hell no. Pardon my French, not gonna happen. Because when you make something for everybody, it becomes mush. It becomes the lowest common denominator, as we used to say about TV back in the day, right? You're creating something for everybody, it's mush. But that's what happens when you're thinking about hundreds of thousands of people and you're not thinking about one individual. You're not thinking about me as an individual when you create something. That's what 2 Chainz, that's what he understood. That's why he has a success and continues to have success. Again, we're on parallel tracks. And so I know that journey. Our journeys aren't that much different. He's been in the business for a while. This is why he's still in the business. He's still thinking of one fan at a time. The second thing, which I touched on, is that you learn how to scale. If you're working with one fan a day, ironically enough, you learn how to scale. Again, back to my startup Cuddler. We had a handful of beta users, which means early users, before something launches or when things are just starting to launch. They call it a soft launch nowadays. We had beta users all summer of that 2014 before we launched the app in fall of 2014. We're talking with them. Again, I was a COO and I was a CMO. So I looked at myself as like the head of community. So I'm talking to them every day. We're figuring out the bug reports. I'm sending the bug reports to my 2 other founders. One was an artist, one was a programmer, and the programmer was the CEO. And so getting as much feedback as possible. We ended up launching September 18th of 2014. Within a week, we had 100,000 users and 10,000 completed connections. In other words, 10,000 people had experience on our app. We had only been out for about 7 days. 100,000 people had downloaded it and used it. Those are incredible numbers, even to this day. If we hadn't done that work with that 2 dozen or so beta testers that we had literally all around the world, because we were an international group. I was in the US, my partner was in the UK, and then our other partner was in Canada. If we didn't have all these beta testers internationally working on our stuff, then we wouldn't have been ready to scale. Imagine all the bug issues. Imagine all the community issues, all the stuff that would have popped up. Like, it gives me a headache years later, even thinking about if we just did it. But instead we focus again on one fan at a time, one fan a day. Because we did that, when 10,000 fans came in, when 100,000 fans came in, when 250,000 fans came in, we were ready. We were fine. It was hard, but we were absolutely ready because we were able to scale. Sometimes we have these big picture ideas. We want to have the bestseller. We want to have the #1 app in the world. We want to have all the riches. And we're afraid to scale back because we think we're going to lose the vision. It's actually quite the opposite. If you focus on the now, you focus on the next best step, as Oprah would say, focusing on the next best step. That gives you the foundation, the insight, the grit to be ready for the next stage. If I didn't have my flop books early in my career, and I have a handful that did goose eggs, if I didn't have book signings where literally no one came, I was sitting there talking with the bookseller for an hour, about my career and learning about their career because no one showed up to my book signings. So then when 5 people came to the book signings, I had appreciation. When 1,000 people came to a book signing or came to see me speak, my appreciation is through the roof. But I remember a dozen plus years ago, nobody was coming to see my stuff. And back to 2 Chainz, I saw and appreciated that fan a day. If you don't appreciate that fan a day, that one fan that you got, that will buy anything that you got, is ready to be served by you, if you don't appreciate that one person, you're not ready for the 10,000. You're not ready for the bestseller. You're not ready for the platinum hit. You're not ready. So you need to appreciate the fans first. Then, if it's meant to be, things will build on there. When you're doing something innovative, it's going to be different. If you're going to be changing the culture and you don't want to do the status quo, then why would everyone understand what you're trying to do unless it was a status quo, right? There's a built-in contradiction. As creators, as solopreneurs, such as myself and maybe like yourself, we're going to be doing things that are different, that are ideally radical, I would say. Whether it's doing a book, doing a TV show, doing an app or a startup, a new business, even doing keynotes, which I do keynotes as well. It's so important to know and respect where your ideas are coming from, and that other people might not get them right away. But more importantly, there's two strategic ways why actually people not taking you seriously can be a great thing. Number one, as I was saying, most things that end up changing a culture are considered absurd. It doesn't make any sense. If you think about the way that we function as an environment right now, again, let's go to the example of Airbnb. When they started, it was around the time I was living in Silicon Valley. So it's from 2008 to 2011, around that time they had started. When they started, they couldn't get any attention from any venture capitalist. It's just two, I think it might have been post-grad, maybe even college kids, who there was an event happening. I want to say it was a yacht event. I want to say America's Yacht, something to that effect. Feel free to look it up online. Because there's a lot of big wigs that come into town in San Francisco, let me be specific, very high rent. It's kind of like the West Coast version of Manhattan. Again, I lived there for a while. Very expensive city. So what the two young guys decided to do is to say, look, a bunch of people are going to be coming to San Francisco for this boating event, right? I think it's a boating race, actually, so it must not be a yacht. For this boating race, why don't we go ahead and rent out this spare room in our apartment and then go from there? That's literally how it started. And it was something on Craigslist that they ended up doing, and it's a fascinating story behind it. Lots of adventures, including selling things on the side, and they were like serious hustlers. So shout out to Brian as well as Joe, who are the two founders of it. But when they started this thing, they were getting laughed out of venture capitalist offices. Think about it. Like, let's just sit with this for a second. My partner and I, my wife, we have or can make a spare bedroom if we end up moving the kids around and all that stuff, right? We're gonna have a stranger come into this house who we just met through a website, pay us up front, and then just live in our house. That sounds absurd. It sounds absurd. The only two cases before that where you would see that happening is if someone was adopted, if you had some type of in-home cleaning service like a maid or a butler, right? Or you had some relative that came from out of town and you barely knew them. When that idea was first struck, people thought they were crazy and they went uphill. And then suddenly the culture changed. You might have these ideas that are brilliant, that are great, that are different, right? The key thing is different. The wave, the flow of the culture might be going in one direction. Yours might be going a little bit against it or 100% against it. You are going to encounter friction. If you have an idea that no one else has thought of, or more importantly, that no one else has executed, then why don't you think that the other people who tried to do it weren't able to make it? Or if you have a new idea that really is truly radical, where it's your idea and no one else has literally thought about it before, which is pretty rare, then it's going to go against the cultural norms. So you are going to get that pushback. Now, it's important to differentiate between constructive criticism and feedback and being shut down and being straight up critical. And that's why it's important to have people in your circle who, what I call your brain trust, people who you know, people who you trust, people who know what direction you're trying to go at with your career, how you're trying to impact the world, and will check you, give you feedback, help you along when you come up with these ideas. And when you come up with these new ideas, you're going to have some pushback. Number two, this is crucial. When people don't take you seriously, you're allowed to work quietly. I'm an introvert. I love working quietly.
I'm literally talking to you in the screen. You don't see a bunch of people behind me. This is totally by design, right? This is not by accident. Beyond that, no matter how you work, you're talking about the inner process and the outer process. And they're both equally important. And those are both advantageous when people aren't taking you seriously. When people aren't taking you seriously, you actually have time to work on what Seth Godin calls the minimal viable audience. In other words, finding the people that are super fans or people who really are into your product. Whatever term you want to use, building that audience. If you're coming up with something or trying to do something that a million other people are doing, or like you came up with a business idea and it's going against Amazon, Google, and Facebook, Meta. If it's going against those three, it's going to be a little bit harder. People might take you seriously, but it's also going to be you trying to, I hate the term, but I can't think of a better one, steal the audience from these billion, trillion-dollar companies. Instead, you're working quietly, building up this minimal viable audience. It also allows you to create in peace, which is so important. We tend to undervalue that. When we come up with an idea, so often we want to have the big flashing lights, have the attention, have the press care about what we're doing. But sometimes that inclement climb, I think that's the term, that slow climb is the best way. And sometimes you're on the dark side of the mountain and then suddenly you appear at the top. That was the case with me and my two co-founders when we did Cuddler. Again, it's an app that connects people for hugs. We launched it in 2014, and the people that we were sharing the idea with thought it was absurd but interesting. Essentially, it's like Tinder or Grindr, which are called hookup apps, and those are for connecting with people sexually. This was not that. This was a version of that, but strictly platonic. So if you felt like you needed physical touch, if you had a rough day and you needed a hug and you didn't have anybody around, you can pull out your phone, go ahead and put your location, find other people in the area who are up to cuddle or have a hug, and then say, yes, I'd like to connect. And then you connect in a public space and have a hug. That was it. We ended up having 100,000 users within the first week and 10,000 completed cuddles back when we launched, again, in September of 2014. The key was this. When we launched, we were one of, if not the laughingstock of Silicon Valley, and particularly beyond. The New York Post, a paper that I wrote for quite a bit at that time, actually was roasting the app. It's like, I'm one of your freelancers. How are you going to roast my app? What they did. So did a lot of daytime talk shows. We were on the late night talk shows. You can look up CUDDLR. Just Google it. You'll see a ton of stuff, mostly within the first week. But two things happened. Number one, obviously we got a ton of attention, which is beautiful, but our app was already out. But number two, no one was taking it seriously. They were like, this app is silly. No one wants to connect with other people for hugs. But me and my two co-founders, we trusted our vision. We're like, no, this is what the people want. So it was against the grain, it was original, and people were laughing at it. Within a year, we had 250,000 users, ended up getting acquired, and we all ended up getting paid. But it started to other people as a joke. The fact that people didn't take it seriously actually helped, because when Cuddler came out, again, we got a ton of attention, most of it negative, for lack of a better term. And then within about a month, maybe 6 weeks, suddenly you started to see the clones come in. Cuddle here, Cuddle Match. I can't remember the name of them. They were all pretty bad. No shots at y'all, they were clones. They were clones of the original thing that me and my partners created. They were clones. If people took us seriously in the beginning, if people were watching our every move while we were creating the app, then that competition would have been there from the very first day. In fact, they could have beaten us to the punch. Because again, we're 3 bootstrapping folks. We all have our day jobs. We were not professional entrepreneurs. It had only been my second startup, and my first one was super, super small. And for the other 2 folks, they had never really worked with startups on that level that we were doing. So it's not like we're professionals, but we had the early advantage. That's the secret when people don't take you seriously. You get the early advantage. And then you're able to run the race based on your original idea, but you have to be willing to take the heat and understand that people aren't going to always embrace your idea when you first come out with it. They're not always going to get your concept. That's why it's your concept. It's not somebody else's vision, it's yours. It's a gift to you. Your job, if you want to make an impact on the culture, is to carry it through to the finish line.
All right, so 1,000 True Fans comes from a classic blog post from Kevin Kelly. I think it actually might have been before they invented the word blog. We're talking 15, 20 years ago, back when people were on LiveJournal and Facebook was just an idea, and going back all the way to MySpace and Friendster. What he talks about is how you just need 1,000 true fans. Because if you have 1,000 true fans, then you can actually financially get by, or at least have a decent living. Now, the definition of true fans are people who will go out of their way to get whatever you want, get whatever you're providing. If you have a new book, they're gonna go and get the book before they even read the description. If you have a new album out, they're gonna go and grab the album before, no matter what. These are people who are diehard fans, as we would say nowadays. These true fans are people who are willing to pay, whether it's time, attention, service, even money, to be closer to the idea or the service or the product that you're trying to get out there. You just need 1,000 of them. His theory is this: if you have 1,000 true fans and each one of them is willing to give you $100, then you're making $100,000 a year. Again, if you have 1,000 true fans, people that will buy any product or service as soon as it comes out that you're doing, you need to get $100 from each of them annually, and you can make $100,000 a year. You can make 6 figures. Now this scales, of course. So if you have 100 true fans, then if you have each of them spending like $1,000 on the work that you're doing, you can make 6 figures. And of course it goes down from there. If you only have 10 true fans, then you better have some good product, because each of them is gonna have to spend $10,000. That's why we have certain specialized niches, like specialized lawnmowers, which were a big deal back when I lived in the Midwest. And they only need to sell a certain amount of product, but the product that they sell is so expensive, or the people that they're working with are so loyal that they're willing to go ahead and pay for it, which is an awesome thing and a rare thing. But if the product that you're selling, such as a book, ends up being not $1,000, this is a $30 book, it is not $10,000, then you might need 900 or 1,000 fans to do so along those lines, maybe even more than that. This principle matters for a whole lot of reasons, and let's dive into it. The first thing is that it focuses you on serving, not on size. I've talked about this in several videos. I'll be sure to throw some links up there, including my own journey with my startup Cuddler, and we got to 250,000 users before we ended up selling it at a profit. Before we had those 250,000 users though, we just had 10 users, and it scaled from there. But because we focus on serving those users, we're able to get to that higher level. Now, so many people that I coach that are rushing to get the maximum amount of people in the door. But with Kevin Kelly's argument and with my own experience, and many of the people that have coached experience, you don't need to have 1 million people off the top. About that in a video that I did recently about 2 Chainz, the rapper, if you're familiar with him, and Seth Godin, the thought leader, and their argument or discussion about minimal viable audience. Be sure and check that one out. If you focus on the minimal viable audience, then your focus shifts from trying to make as much money as possible or trying to have as much turnover to actually serving your audience. And there's a ridiculous long list of benefits from that. If you end up focusing more on your true fans, then you can actually build true fans. I was recently talking to a coaching client and talking about how you might be connecting with tens, dozens, maybe even hundreds or thousands of people, right? If you're fortunate enough to be exposed to that many people when you're at a conference, or if you do keynotes like I do, or you end up having a big social media audience, you're exposed to tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. Only a fraction of those people are gonna be what Kevin Kelly would call your true fans. Your job is to find them. They're the people that are going to hang around afterwards when you have an event, and they're gonna hang out and wanna learn more about your product or service. They're the people that are going to be retweeting or liking or sharing your ideas on your favorite social media platform. If you're like me, which I highly recommend, you have some type of email newsletter or some way of actually, as I say, owning the land versus renting someone else's platform. If you have something like joindamon.me, which is an email newsletter list that I've had for a couple decades, but got serious about 5 years ago, where every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, y'all get a newsletter from me. You get a message. That people that sign up for that at joindamon.me, they are more than likely going to become those diehards, those true fans, those hardcore folks. Those are folks you want to focus on. So in my case, I've done 4 TED Talks. I've done a lot of keynotes. My 26th book called Career Remix, Get the Gig You Want Based on the Skills You Got, is coming out in a few months. I've had bestsellers. All the people that I've been exposed to, small fraction of them, a little piece of them are the true diehard fans. You might be one of them. They're the people that pre-order my books before the ink's even dry. They're the people that join my boot camps that I have over at damonbrown.net. They are the folks that subscribe to this YouTube channel and subscribe to it from the beginning when I started and my lighting was all jacked up. Those are the diehard fans. Those are the true fans. If you build the true fans and you sort them out, then you're able to serve them. And as you serve them, they're going to bring in other true fans, what Seth Godin would call a tribe. But you can't get the whole tribe at once. You got to start with one. As 2 Chainz says in the other video that I made, you start with 1 fan a day, 1 song a day that you're creating, 1 product, 1 service, 1 person. If you do that, you build that true fan in there. And again, if you have 10 true fans that are willing to spend thousands of dollars on your work, you don't need 1 million people. So number 1, if you focus on the true fans, you shift to service rather than quantity. Kind of like quality versus quantity. The second part that occurs is, as I mentioned before, you end up focusing on the minimal viable audience. That's the smallest audience that's the most dedicated. The minimal viable audience is the smallest audience that's the most dedicated. It's almost like it's inversely proportional. Because you're trying to go for everybody, then you're going to be nothing to everybody. But if you're very specific, then that matters a lot. As I've said in other discussions, I'm focused on non-traditional entrepreneurs, side hustlers, solopreneurs, people who are part of the LGBTQ community, people who are BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, people who are underestimated and over-mentored, who don't have the usual resources, the people that are the target specifically for my latest book, Build From Now, that's written for them. That is not for everybody, right? Because of that, I'm able to attract my true fans. Well, my friend Nilofer Merchant, she has a great book called The Power of Onlyness, which she would call signaling. If you're not willing to not have certain customers, if you're not willing to stand up and say, this is who I am, you're not going to attract those true fans. If you're not attracting the true fans, then you're not going to have true fans. You're going to have fair weather friends. You're going to have people that come through, maybe when you have a new book, maybe not. They're going to have people that will be into you because you're that hot new thing. You happen to have a bestseller. So all your energy should be going towards these true fans. And if you're not signaling, as Nilofer Merchant would say, your true self, your best self, then that first part of the process might be a little lonely because not everyone's going to get what you're trying to do. And as Seth Godin would say, your job is to maintain, whether it's pulling on different resources, having a very lean company, maybe even having a day job, which is why I'm a big proponent of side hustles rather than just diving in. Whatever you need to keep those resources going until you start to attract the right people. And once you start to attract the right people, then they become your true fans. As you build a rapport, as you build trust, as you build strength with these true fans, then they start to collect. And suddenly, you're making a living. Now, how many true fans you need depends on the type of work you're trying to do. For me, I need hundreds of true fans, as I found out, to make a decent living. Other people might need thousands. You just might need 10. But no matter what path or what you need for your particular lifestyle or your particular creativity path, it always starts with one. I remember those moments when I found my first true fans as an author, as a keynoter, as a TED speaker, as a coach even. I remember those moments. You'll know when it clicks. And you know that's the person that will support you on your journey because you're supporting them 100% on theirs.
It's an important one. Make profit without social media. The title is great, I think. I like the title. It also represents something bigger than just profit. It also means a livelihood. It means you can, I have a wife and 2 kids. Sound like a stereotype now. I have a wife and 2 kids. And so, being able to help feed them, being able to be my best self, being able to show up for y'all and serve in my particular way. Again, if you start watching the channel, I'll share some of the adventures I've had from some of the more unusual books that I've written. I'll leave it at that. And finding audiences for that, to the startups that I've done, which were, in my opinion, very different and very, they were not mainstream. I'll be kind about it. They were not mainstream, but they found y'all. And some of them became really big hits. But that's because I had a particular vision. Not getting as involved in social media now actually helps you protect that vision. Because there's lots of theories, from echo chambers where you end up saying something and you're only connected with other people who believe the exact same thing, to the vitriol that happens. My subscriber base has grown up a lot since the beginning of the year for this show. So it's like, so now I'm part of the thing I'm doing is moderating and working with community. And so that becomes a discussion. All those different things happen within these spheres when you get involved with, frankly, the internet or things related to it, things on top of the internet. If you're able to build your business and make an impact without relying strictly on social media, then you have the opportunity to blossom. And it's not necessarily that you're protected or that you're not involved as much. It's just, it doesn't dominate your time. And so it doesn't mean that you need to leave Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or any of the things that you're on. But I want to show you alternatives that I end up doing myself. With my own journey, and I'll get into this a little bit more later in the show, I actually left social media platforms about 3 or 4 years ago. In fact, I spent a whole quarter, so 3 months, I want to say winter of 2019. That sounds right. Winter 2019. So a few years ago. And I got off of all social media platforms because I wanted to connect with my community more. The craziest thing happened. The first week, of course, was super uncomfortable. There was no Facebook, no Twitter, no LinkedIn, nothing. And I told everybody, I was like, I'm going to be offline. So I told everybody. But the other crazy thing that happened was that suddenly I had to connect with people. This was before the pandemic. So I was connecting with people in person. And I was texting folks being like, hey, because I'm a business coach. I was like, hey, how can I support you as a coach and so forth? And that level of intimacy as far as connecting to people went up. And so did my profit. And I can't remember the numbers, but it was staggering. I was like, I thought I'd be losing money this quarter. I'm actually making more money. Now I end up getting back on social media, and then about every year or two, I'm leaving one of the major social media platforms. First one was Facebook. I'll get into that in a minute. And I've left some of the other platforms. Let's get into it though, because there are so many different ways that you could actually build community without having to depend on social media. This became a topic. I was planning on talking about something else. And then an old colleague and friend of mine, Casey Newton, ended up having this breaking news, pun intended, about how a single engineer, let's pause for a second. If I had an infographic with a stop sign, I would put it right here. How a single engineer, just one person, and one individual like you or like me, brought down Twitter on Monday. Read that again. How a single engineer brought down Twitter on Monday. This Monday, just like 48 hours ago. An engineer made a decision, and because of the rough condition, I'm being kind here, that Twitter's in right now, they're able to do the proverbial flip of the switch like they do in the cartoons or in the bad action movies, and suddenly everything shut down. I went onto Twitter on Monday and I couldn't see any images. I thought I needed new glasses because my eyesight isn't that great. No, actually, all the images on Twitter were broken. No one could see any images. So as I talked about in my newsletter, you can join at joindamon.me. If you had a product launch on Monday, Apple was talking about new products this week. No one could see their images. If you were dependent on social media, that's too bad. Is that the position that you want to be in? Excellent article. It gets into that. I will not belabor that because Casey does an excellent job. Good job as always, Casey. I love your work. Be sure to check it out. The link is down below if you want to read it after the fact, or if you want to open up another tab and read it right now, if you're one of those multitaskers, which you don't want me multitasking, right? All right. Let's get into the questions. The lines are open, by the way, so feel free to drop in the comments if you have any questions or commentary, whatever. Did you have a product that you tried to launch or something you're trying to get out there, and suddenly you realize that social media wasn't going to help you? Like, what's really good? Tell us what's going on. All right. The first question. Thank you for your patience with the new format. I'm still getting used to it. Let me go ahead and get rid of the first things first. Speaking of technology, it is inescapable. Let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it 100. It is inescapable. That's one of the reasons why I embrace it so much. All right, that's much easier. I'll try to make the text better, bigger in the future. Why shouldn't I rely on social media? Question I get a lot. It's like, well, social media is great. That's how I connect with consumers or customers or whatever term you want to use. I call it the people that I serve. That's how I connect with them. That spigot, I look at it like a faucet. That spigot could be turned off at any moment. An excellent example, again, is, and I'll throw the link back up here so you guys can read the article. An engineer, it sounds like they screwed up. An engineer screwed up at Twitter, and suddenly no one had their pictures. And that went on for, I think, the whole day. I had checked in about once an hour. There's still one of your pictures. So I think most of it, if not the whole day. Do you want to be dependent on that? So your 4-figure, 5-figure, God forbid, 6 or 7-figure business, and you're like, oh no, I get my customers through Twitter. No. Facebook is the way. It's the wave. No. Instagram, people DM me, and that's how I sell my products. Woo! What happens when something like this happens? You suddenly can't reach your customer. The reason I bring this up is that this is not a new phenomenon. As you tell by the gray hairs, I've been around the block a couple of times. This stuff was happening back when I lived in Silicon Valley. I lived in Silicon Valley more than a decade ago. I would say a dozen plus years ago, I lived in Silicon Valley. This stuff was happening then, except it was the end of MySpace, except it was all these different platforms, which I'm starting to forget now. But this isn't a new thing. And if you rely on one particular platform, then you're in trouble. The analogy that I use with my coaching clients, it's renting versus buying. There's nothing wrong with renting an apartment or a condo. There's nothing wrong with buying a place. Like, I've done both. My family's done both. No judgment. So let's put the judgment out of that. But it's very similar to you talking about, I'm going to rent this place. And this is my house. This is my stuff. This is how things work, et cetera, and I'm going to paint the walls and all these things. But at any moment, right, your landlord can come and say, hey, you can't do that. There's a new rule. Or, hey, there's new stuff going on in the city. I used to live in San Francisco again. So it's like, I have vivid memories of this, where you have that conversation, or worse, you get like a letter. They don't even talk to you. And they're like, hey, your rent's going up 300%. So you're going to have to make some decisions. It's active at the end of your contract or your lease, which will be in like 2 months. So suddenly you're going from X amount of dollars to 3 times that. Or more intense situation, they go and say, hey, good news, bad news. Good news is that I made a bunch of money. It's not like a Geico commercial. I made a bunch of money because I just sold this building. The bad news is that the new owners are actually going to turn into something else that is not within your demographic or your capacity, or we're going to turn into luxury condos, whatever. So you can't live here anymore. That's what it's like to rely on social media. And anytime Mr. Zuckerberg, Mr. Musk, I always forget the Snapchat guy, but I can see his face. You know who I'm talking about if you're into social media. At any moment, it could be like, all right, yeah, we're going to change the algorithm. There's a new sheriff in town. We're going to go in this direction. Owning is saying, this is how I'm going to serve my audience. This is how I'm going to decorate my home. If I want to sell it or get rid of it, fine. If I want to burn it to the ground, I can do that and just raise it and then start over again. Or I can cultivate it and it can become something that's in my proverbial family for generations. That's the difference between building your business on social media and building your business outside of social media. What I've built, social media has nothing to do with it. It can't touch it. And I'm going to get into some of those methods in a moment. And yeah, thank you for your question, Stephanie. How do you use social media for your business, and when don't you use it or rely on it? I feel so much pressure about the algorithms. Exactly. So thank you, Stephanie, by the way. That last part is actually, I think, key to this conversation. You feel so much pressure about the algorithms. There's only one real algorithm, right? That's the algorithm of the people that you're serving. That's it. It's not the algorithm of, I'm on YouTube, so it's like, I understand. But it's not the algorithm of YouTube. It's not the algorithm of Twitter. It's not the algorithm of LinkedIn and all these things. It's the algorithm of your community. I'll give you a really simple example, and then we'll get into the rest of your question. My coaching clients tend to come in a lot just after the new year and towards the end of the year. And that's because they're driven individuals for the most part, like myself. I'm very ambitious. So a lot of people I coach tend to be ambitious. And towards the end of the year, you start to get that moment where you're like, all right, this is Thanksgiving here in the States, so November. It's like, all right, so what did I do this year? What did I do this year? At the beginning of this year, I said I was going to do this, that, and the third, and I got like half of one of those things done. I had a resolution of 3 things. I got a half a thing done, which I've been there before. I need support for that. And then vice versa. The new year started. It's February. Right now I'm speaking to you in March. And then you look up and you're like, wow, I had these things that I wanted to do. And it's almost the end of the first quarter of the year. What am I going to do? So a lot of my work, from my books to the other things that I do, they're built around the algorithm, the rhythm. You should think about algorithm, the rhythm of my audience. So I cater to that. So my audience has really, especially on this YouTube channel, has grown up quite a bit over the past, say, 3-4 weeks since the beginning of the year. But that makes sense because a lot of the stuff that I talk about has to do with goal setting, has to do with being a better person as far as emotional intelligence, has to do with passive income, where a lot of us here in the States, we just turned in or about to turn in our taxes because our tax day is middle of April. And suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, this is how much money I made. And that could either be panic or joy, or you want more of it or whatever. So they're coming to me and saying, I need to watch Damon's show because I need to level up my stuff. So it's not so much about the algorithm per se of that particular social media platform, but the rhythm of the people that you're serving. Hopefully that makes sense. So when it comes to how to use social media for your business and when don't you use it or rely on it, that is a pretty broad question in a good way, because I think it's basically the whole argument of the show. And so I'm going to get into a couple ways where you can differentiate. It sounds like that's what you're asking, between those 2 buckets. So thank you for the question, Stephanie, for sure. Yeah, it's some good insight there for sure, as far as just how you frame the question. So I appreciate that. See if I can turn the ticker off. There we go. Like I said, getting used to the new technology. One place that you might want to start, get more insight, particularly with the question you just had, Stephanie, is I have an episode from about 1.5 years ago called 2 Chainz, Seth Godin, and Minimal Viable Audience. 2 Chainz is a very popular rapper down in Atlanta. Seth Godin is a very popular marketer and leadership coach. Shout out to Seth. I actually know Seth. I do not know 2 Chainz. And Seth came up with this concept of minimal viable audience. Minimal viable audience is, we take it back to Silicon Valley, and I'll keep this as brief as possible. There's something called a minimal viable product, or MVP. It's basically this, almost like a prototype, that you get out to your audience so it's enough so that they can give you feedback to let you know you're going in the right direction. And then it's called iterating, which means improving, and you slowly improve that. My last startup, Cuddler, it was an app that connected people for hugs. A lot of stuff that we launched early on were MVPs, and it was enough to bring in literally hundreds of thousands of users. But that MVP was enough for them to know what direction we were going in, and then we rapidly improved it over that course of the year before we sold the company. So that's the process. Minimal viable audience is the exact same thing, except it's people. So it's saying, I want to build something that connects with what I call non-traditional entrepreneurs. People who are solopreneurs, people who are side hustlers, people who are doing things on top of the regular stuff that they're doing. So they might have a day job. It might be like me, where they have elderly parents, whatever they need to take care of, and or they have little kids, which I have little kids, et cetera, et cetera. How can I connect with literally one of them? Connect with literally one of them, and then build products or services for them. Literally one. Who identifies that? In marketing, they call that an avatar. But this is like a real person. All right, let me provide for them. I remember the first person I coached, shout out to you, you know who you are. And with working with them, I was able to level up my game. So that following year, I had a handful of people that I coached. The year after that, I think I had a few dozen. The year after that, I had hundreds of people that I coached. And that's the space that I've been in. But it started with one. This video is excellent as far as Seth's argument and discussion. I'm talking about it, but Seth is great as far as making it as simple as possible. 2 Chainz, the rapper, used this method, but he said it in a very different way. One of my favorite videos, one of my favorite episodes over the past 2.5 years. I think y'all get a lot of it, but Stephanie, it kind of addresses your question where it's like, where do I lean on social media and where do I don't? A more important one, and this is probably the most important video outside of our discussion right now, to watch, is really good to watch after. How to make money without Facebook. I'm calling Facebook out, but it doesn't matter whether it's Facebook or whatever your social media of choice is. I talk about my experience of leaving Facebook, like permanently leaving Facebook. I think I left a handful of years ago now. I talk about this experience step by step and how my profits went like this, like hockey stick, as they say. Maybe it wasn't that dramatic, but it was very dramatic. And I was confused. And then it wasn't until I did this episode a few years after the fact where I was like, oh, I know what happened. I was leaning on, and this gets to get back into your question, Stephanie. I was leaning on social media to find my audience. I was leaning on the hashtags. I was leaning on the opportunity to go viral. I was leaning on the special sauce, the algorithm, the black box that nobody knows about. The engineers there barely know about it because it's been, if you think about Facebook, it's been around for what, 15, 20 years? It's like engineer after engineer after engineer has messed with it. There isn't probably a single person, including Zuckerberg, who knows how it works. I'm relying on this, again, this black box, to take it to an airplane analogy. I'm relying on this black box. I don't know what's inside of it, but I know it works. But then what happens when it doesn't work? Or what if I'm relying on it, which is what I talk about in this video. What if I'm relying on it and there's actually 10x, as they say in Silicon Valley, 10x of what I could be doing. I could be doing a multiple of what I'm doing right now, but I'm relying on this secret system led by people that might not have my best interest in mind. I talk about that in the video, and hopefully that addresses some of the stuff that I brought up. Another book, ironically by Seth Godin, is called Tribes, that talks about this. I was just getting into Seth Godin when Tribes came out. I know his later books better, but this is considered a classic. And it talks about this minimal viable audience. Who is your tribe, right? You heard that saying? He was part of that movement. I want to say this was about 15 years ago. He was part of that movement where people talk about having a tribe. That was him, right? He was the genesis of that, or at least one of the genocide, if I'm using that correctly. And so, who are the people that you're trying to serve? How can you reach them? And how can you deliver what you need to deliver to them? Who are the people you need to serve? How can you reach them? And what or how did you want to deliver what you want to deliver to them? I want to reach non-traditional entrepreneurs, probably like yourself. I'm using my show, which is my IP, something that I own, something that no platform can take away, to connect with y'all. That's why I started this show 2.5 years ago. What I'm delivering is hopefully insight to help you get your business off the ground. And in this case, with our conversation, without having to rely on social media. If you can answer those 3 questions, you're good. And that middle question, how do I reach them? That's really the conversation for today, because that's where the work happens. But there's many, many different ways to reach folks. And I know there's some other questions that talk about that. All right, so here's another question that also came in. Excuse me. Sorry, the weather is changing here, as I can tell. So apologies for the throat. And so, do I need social media to bring in business? And that's piggybacking on what Stephanie was talking about. No, you don't. That's a beautiful thing. There's so many different ways that you can bring in business. You can connect with people in person. As I talked about, that minimal viable audience, that one individual, and building a relationship with them, and that one person becomes 3, kind of like a cell, right? That one person becomes 2. Excuse me, that two people become 4. Again, like a handful of years ago, I was coaching 1 or 2 people. Now I coach hundreds. That's because it's the focus of being with one person, serving that one individual. In person is great for that. Another way to do that is to actually communicate with people directly using text, using different types of phone calls. I don't know why I couldn't remember phone calls. Phone calls. That's a lot of what happened when I was talking about making money without Facebook. I suddenly couldn't rely on social media anymore. So I actually had to reach out to the people I was serving. Go figure. Some of that occurred through speaking engagements. I connected people after the show or whatever. Some of that happened from me doing books. I did a lot of books during that period of time. I had just finished a 6-year run where I wrote 8 books. Each of those books is an opportunity to connect with new people, right? And so there's different ways to build things and connect with people. There's having a show, which is what I'm doing right now, to be meta for a second. Not the other meta, but meta in the classic Latin term of it. But do you understand what I'm saying? There's a level of intimacy that you can build so that you do not need to bring in social media to get all your business going. And I think it's really important to understand that. So let's go ahead and break down a couple of the platforms here that might help you along the way. One thing that I use, and I talked about it briefly in last week's episode, where we talked about how you can run your business without being online all the time. And so some of these items I actually talked about way more in depth last week. Be sure and check out last week's episode. You can always go to youtube.com/BrownDamon and then look up the episode from before. I can also throw a link in there in a second. Strikingly is a platform that allows you to build your website. And why is this important? It's important, as I talked about last week, because there's so many entrepreneurs, particularly pre-pandemic. Now it's becoming a little bit wiser, particularly since there's been so much funny business with Facebook and Twitter and other platforms. TikTok might get banned by the time you watch this rerun, right? At least here in America. Do not rely on them. That's my point. There's so much funny business happening. it's been happening, but now we're becoming more aware that people are like, oh, you know what? I should actually have a website. And it's not so much my generation, because I'm approaching middle age, but more the generations younger than me that like the internet natives, because I remember when the internet didn't exist. So it's like those internet natives, they're like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and my website is facebook.com/Brown Damon. It's like, no, it's not your website. Again, you're renting. You just got yourself an apartment. Did you really want to do some serious construction there and make it your forever home? Or did you want to set up a forever home and then rent this place for a little while and then slowly migrate over to your forever home? A website is a forever home. It's not going to go away unless you don't pay the bills or you tear it down yourself. Strikingly is my favorite platform to build a website. It's not the same as Facebook or Twitter. It's not a social media platform. It's closer to Wix, Squarespace. I know there's other ones I'm forgetting, but y'all are familiar with those. Strikingly is different, because they're really good at multimedia. And I'm into multimedia. So I have the show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. We're up to 320 or so shows at this point. I want to be able to showcase that on my website. I sell books and t-shirts. The Bring Your Worth t-shirt, you can barely see it, based on my previous book from 2 years ago. The Bring Your Worth mug, all those things are available on my website. So you can actually have a sales panel in there. All that different stuff. It's a one-stop shop for everything related to the Bring Your Worth brand and my work as a speaker and so forth. Great platform to do it on. It works with multimedia really well. There's a link in there. It's an affiliate link, so I believe you actually get a discount on your first month, I think. But it's super affordable. I love it. Again, I'm a fan. Another platform that can help you connect with your audience is ConvertKit. If you get my newsletter, again, it's at joindamon.me. It's for free. It's every Wednesday at 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're doing it every Wednesday for as long as I can remember. I want to say we're probably approaching 10 years now. It's been a long time. But it's a free service to y'all. Let you know when I'm going to be in your town. New episodes coming out. Hopefully some wisdom and to level up your toolbox. I do that through ConvertKit. Excuse me. ConvertKit allows you to organize all the people that subscribe to your newsletter, put them into different categories, so you can send certain messages to some, certain ones to the other. You can find out where your audience comes from. I have a quiz at buildfromnowquiz.com that'll allow you to learn your biggest creative resources. I also have, again, the show here at youtube.com/Brown Damon. I have a column at Inc. Magazine at inkdamonbrown.com. I have all these different, they call them funnels in the marketing world, but I have all these different entry points. ConvertKit will say, oh, this new person that subscribed to your newsletter, they really dug that Inc. column that you had. That's how they came to see you. So I'm even able to understand how effective my different ways of connecting with y'all are, right? So if way more people are connecting to the newsletter through this TV show at youtube.com/Brown Damon, the Bring Your Worth show, and way less end up clicking on the link that's available on my Inc. column at inkdamonbrown.com, then I'll be like, oh, okay, maybe there's more of that audience that I'm connecting with the TV show compared to the Inc. column. So all these little details will help. ConvertKit is actually not free. Some of the services are free, but they're not as robust. I would definitely check it out, though, if you're looking to level up. I don't know if it's for starting a newsletter from scratch. Like, what I would actually recommend, and it's just kind of hitting me now, so follow me on this journey. If you're just starting a newsletter, just start a newsletter, which is how I started many moons ago. Literally just make a newsletter, something short that you want to give to the people you want to serve, and then just send them an email. BCC it, you're not showing everybody else's email, and then just send it to them and get feedback. I did that for actually quite a few years. And then it got to the point where I had a few hundred subscribers, and I was all like, I'm this BCC is getting messy. I had to send multiple emails because there's only so many things you can put into BCC. This is a little while ago. I'm sure it's got more sophisticated. Then I got to ConvertKit, and it's been great. So ConvertKit might not be your starter kit, but if you already are going in a direction of a newsletter, if you already have a bunch of followers, for lack of a better term, people that rock with you, you might want to go straight for ConvertKit and start turning those people into people, again, that are coming to your home versus coming to your apartment. Last platform that I want to, and I'm calling these platforms, but I can't think of a better term. Last platform I want to highlight is StreamYard, which in a meta moment, I'm actually using them right now. And StreamYard allows you to live stream to all the different social media platforms. That's a twist you might not have been expecting. So StreamYard basically says, you can go on Facebook Live. I'm not on Facebook, but you can go on Facebook Live and be live with your audience. You can go on LinkedIn, be live with your audience. You can go on Twitter. It's kind of broken now, but you can still be live with your audience. There's ways to do that. And obviously Amazon Live, shout out to Amazon. I'm connected with them. I'm live with y'all right now. But what if you want to do all of them? Suddenly, you can do all of them. And I'm connecting with 4 different platforms, 4 as we speak. 3, and then there's a couple stragglers, but at least 3 of them. I would say 4 solid. This allows you to do that. I don't want to give the current price because if you're watching in the future, then I'm going to be wrong. But it's fairly affordable, especially if you're doing regular, if you want to connect with your audience regularly through video, as I do. Again, I do it 3 times a week. It makes sense for me, right? That's a dozen times in a month. Ooh, that's 144 or so times a year. I did that math quick. Man, it's work. This helps. They help you with the work. Again, it's another affiliate link. I think you get a good discount with this one, so check it out if you're going in that direction. All right, and be sure and shoot over any other questions you may have. I know there's at least 1 or 2 more on the chamber. I already answered this question. What do I need to build my own pipeline? Well, I just told you. So we can go over that again. The first thing I would recommend is having a website. Strikingly is my personal favorite. Building a newsletter. That's another way you can do it. You don't have to do all of these. Let's be crystal clear. I was talking to someone over the last week or 2, and I mentioned that I do a newsletter once a week, and their eyes kind of glazed over. And that's the way that I think of like all the YouTubers / podcasters like Pat Flynn or Casey Neistat, who got out of the game, but he was big when I first started watching YouTube. And they would literally do something every single day, like on video every single day, a podcast every single day. I was like, that just makes me tired. So if newsletters aren't for you, don't do a newsletter. I do a newsletter. I'm a professional writer. So me doing newsletters, it's not light work. It's absolutely work. When you join the newsletter at joindamon.me, you'll see the work I put into it. But it's like doing your reps every morning. It's cool. It's cool. I'm not going to stress out about it. Newsletters are your thing. ConvertKit is an excellent choice. Finally, StreamYard, if you want to stream and connect with other people. One other thing I'd recommend too, which I mentioned in passing last week, I have people that dislike social media more than I do. I have great conversations with them. They're like, Damon, I can't leave social media. And I'm like, come on, like, get off the farm. Come on. They're like, no, I can't. It's like, why? And there's usually 1 or 2 reasons. Number 1, their community is so built on social media that if they leave, they're like only a small percentage of the community will come with them. So I need to slowly bring that community over. Or the other half, which a lot more people than I expected when I told them I was leaving Facebook. Again, I think it was like 4 years ago. When I told them I was leaving Facebook, they looked at me either confused or with a longing in their eyes, like they wanted to be me. And most of them, get this, most of them explained to me, and maybe you can relate to this. My business that I consult for, that my day job, whatever, requires me to be on this such and such social media platform. I can't leave Facebook. because I'm posting social media posts for my client, and so I can't go. So I can minimize my time on it, but I can't go. This is the answer for you. It's Meet Edgar. I talked about them on the show a few times. Fantastic female-led company. Shout out to Laura. And what they basically do is you put in all your social media posts. Hell, you can put them in for the year, whatever. Put them all in there. And they handle, they just started doing TikTok. So all the major social medias. Put them all in there. And then you have two choices. You can either put them in a set calendar and say, this is going to go out on March 17th at 9 a.m. It's going to come out Saturday, blah, 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 at blah, blah, blah. Like, you can do that. So essentially, you're a media manager, as they say. Or, which is, when I was using them a lot, this is how I use them. You put all your social media in there, and then you just hit roulette and say, post it at this time, post any of the social media posts here. When I was really hardcore with my ink column at inkdamonbrown.com, I still have 600 columns up there if you want to check it out. There's new content coming up there too, just to give you a heads up. My 600 columns, I'd have social media posts for all of them. And then they would randomly go out. When I first started the show 2.5 years ago, same exact thing. But if you think about it, if you create, I'm going to get into the content side now. If you create evergreen content, or if you have something like a book, or you have a webinar that people can purchase and replay after the fact. If you have stuff that's going to be valuable, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, it doesn't matter when people receive the message, correct? And in this case, get meta for a second, there's a lot more people watching the show right now than it was a year ago. So if I mention certain products or certain books or certain ideas, it's going to be a much bigger audience than it was when I was talking about the same stuff a year ago. Social media, if you have to use it, it's the exact same way. Do you not have more followers or whatever than you did, say, 2 years ago? You probably do, especially if you're active on it. Meet Edgar works miraculously because you do all this and you literally don't have to be on social media. Now, if you want to respond after you do a post, that part's up to you. But if it's just saying, this book is available, or this item is available, or there's a resource for y'all, they can engage with you in different ways. Social media is just then a billboard versus it being the way that you connect with your customer, right? There's a subtle difference with that. Once I figured that out, it changed the game. That's why I was comfortable leaving Facebook, because I was like, oh, I don't need it anymore. So I'm connecting with my customers more one-on-one or on my different platforms that I own versus Zuckerberg and crew trying to find people for me, and they don't even know who I am or who I'm trying to connect with. They can't, because I own my own business. I know my people more than anybody else would. At least I should. You should too. So the homework ends up being creating this minimal viable audience, or finding the minimal viable audience. Not even creating one, finding them and figuring out who they are, how you're going to connect with them, and what you're going to deliver to them, and how you're going to deliver to them. That's it. Answer those three. That's it. And suddenly the social media thing becomes a little bit less anxiety ridden. It becomes not about trying to, understand the algorithm or connect with more people by paying Facebook or whomever more money. It's like, no, it becomes, how can I build this for my audience? This. All right. Today's show, build an audience from scratch. Cheers to that. When it comes to building your audience, one of the biggest questions I get is, how do I start? What do I do? What am I supposed to be doing here? I don't understand. I'm confused. I know how I want to serve them. I just don't know where they are. Or if I am able to tap into them, I don't seem to quite build that community with them. What do I do? A lot of the discussion that we're going to have today, and there's 3 tools I'm going to talk about, as well as a lot of other resources, are about how you can actually build your audience from scratch, from nothing. You actually can. with Bringing Worth TV, there's 18,000 plus of y'all that are officially subscribed, thousands more, in some cases millions more of y'all that have tuned in. That started from zero 3.5 years ago. Last December was my anniversary. With those things in mind, it's so important to know what tools can help you, the mindset to have, and more importantly, to have the patience. It's better to have the aim right and be patient with it than to just try to build an audience and you might not know exactly how to serve them, or you might need to get feedback from them as far as how to serve them best. So I'm going to highlight some of the questions that I get all the time. If you have questions, concerns, funny jokes, throw them in the chat. And I think we're going to be on for another half hour. So come through, pull up some popcorn, chill out, right? So, excuse me. So where do I begin growing my audience? That is the killer question. I think the best place to start is with one of my mentors, Seth Godin, who I worked with him in a mentorship a few years back, but I've also loved his books and so forth. He talks about starting with one. And there really is nothing better than that for a couple of different reasons. Number one, if you find one particular person to serve, you can tailor all your stuff to literally that person. Old school advertising talk, that's like an avatar. This person is exemplary as far as who you want to serve, how you want to serve them. You notice I keep saying serve. So building an audience isn't about, building an audience isn't about making as much money as possible and getting to that point as quickly as possible. Building an audience is saying, I'm going to serve a particular group, and in serving that particular group, I'm going to be able to make a living. I'm going to be able to serve them in such a way that they actually will give me money because what I'm doing is so valuable. As I've said in the past, the best advice I got was whatever you're charging, it should be, whatever you're delivering should be 10x that. In other words, if you buy, the complete Bringing Worth collection, as of this recording, it's $40. There's $400 worth of value in this. And in my work, quite literally, if you read this, you'll probably be up a few $100s. So it makes sense for me to say, hey, here, again, as Seth Godin says, here, I made this for you. What's not for you? Okay, that's okay. But it is for you. You're going to get at least $400 worth of value in this. That's how things should be priced. To get to that point, though, you have to know who you're serving and why you're serving them in a particular way. That means going and doing a deep dive into the people that you really want to serve. And when you're able to connect with those people that you really want to serve, then you're able to have those discussions with them. Excuse me. It could be as simple as I like 3-4 years ago, I literally sent a survey to the people that I serve. And I said, hey, there's like 4 or 5 offerings I'm trying to do. You want another book? Do you want an online course? Do you want a podcast? Like, what do you want? And they got back right away and were like, no, this is what we want. And based on those decisions, I was able to give them what they want. They paid me for it. And I'm like, thank you, because they told me what they wanted. How exactly did I connect with them though? Well, that's the secret sauce. One of the best things you can do for yourself, is actually own and create your own media pipeline. My background is journalism, been a long-time journalist, so I'm biased towards this. I also understand the media landscape and the social media landscape pretty well. Based on that, you want to have as little friction as possible between you and the people you serve. As I said, as I wanted to build my audience and grow my audience, the handful of people that really rocked with me, I actually connected with them through my free newsletter at joindamon.me. I've had the newsletter for, before I had kids, before I got married, I've had newsletter for maybe going on 2 decades, a long time. Before I even became an entrepreneur, I had the newsletter, even though I had different topics. And I got serious about the newsletter, as in organizing it, probably about 10 years ago. With the newsletter, though, it began, actually it was 25 years ago. Oh my gosh, I'm starting to remember now.
when I started a newsletter, it was literally just me emailing folks who were interested in the work I was doing. Then I started BCCing, as in blind CC, because the email list got too big and there's some corporate folks there, and it's like, I can't, they weren't just friends anymore. And then expanded to me working with different platforms to help organize it. So I previously worked with ConvertKit, shout out to them, and now I'm going to different platforms. I'll talk about them in a minute. The thing is that it began as an audience of 1, and then 2. And now my newsletter has several hundred folks who are rocking with me. Let's have that conversation. Let's build that discussion. And it comes out every Wednesday, 5:55 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. And with that work, with that effort, then I'm able to build with them and create something that's a little bit bigger. So that's what I mean by starting with 1. That's how you start. I've seen cases, again, I've been a business coach for several years now, I guess at this point, I guess I can call it several, and I've coached 300 plus folks. And one of the challenging things is reverse engineering. Is saying, wow, I have this audience, or I'm going to be on the Today Show tomorrow. I know folks that have recently been on the Today Show. Shout out to them. You know who you are. But it's like, I'm going to be on the Today Show tomorrow. Okay. Should I start a newsletter? Should I write a book? And it's like, no, you should get ready for your Today Show appearance. Reverse engineering it when you haven't built up that energy is hard, because then you have this opportunity and there's nothing you can do about it. When I got on the second stage of TED, that would be almost 10 years ago now, but let's just say 8 years ago. I already had my newsletter. I already had books out. So I was able to take full advantage of that moment. If you want to check out my talk, you just go to bringyourworth.tv. All my TED Talks are available on there. The TEDx is as well as one on the second stage of TED. My whole point is that you want to build from now before that wave comes, and then you'll be ready. So think more about preparing. It's almost, I always think of food analogies. And if you've been to my keynotes, you know this analogy, where it's more like, think about it like setting the table. Thanksgiving is coming. Christmas is coming, whatever holiday you have when you have a bunch of people over. Okay, so are you going to wait until the night before and then try to set up the plates and all that stuff? No. You're going to set up the menu. You're going to touch base with a couple people that you think might want to come by, and you're going to start prepping the food. Oh yeah, so-and-so's partner is a vegetarian, so let me be thoughtful and I'll have some tofurkey over here. I'll change it up. Or this person's really thoughtful about their diet. Let me not just have the sweet yams. Let me have these fresher vegetables over here, so they have something to eat, so it's not so sweet. It's better for their health. You see what I mean? Like it's like prep. It's like meal prep. You're getting everything organized. The thing is that you don't know when Thanksgiving is going to come. A year ago, I had about 700 subscribers. 700 of y'all who were tuning in, subscribe to the show. Now I have about 18,000. That happened. That wasn't happening, and then suddenly it happened. And when it happened, I had already had about 250 episodes for the 18,000 of y'all to watch. 250. This episode is 369. So get that stuff together now, instead of just saying, I don't have audience. Get ready for the audience you're going to have, so you can actually serve them in a way that works well. One of my favorite new tools to do this is called Beehive. That's Beehiiv. No Beyonce, no affiliation to the official Beehive. Cute name anyway, though. Shout out to Beyonce with her new country songs. Beehive is a relatively new platform. It is similar to ConvertKit, to MailChimp, but I think MailChimp's going through something. They got acquired. I think they're shutting down, if I heard correctly. But I like them for a few different reasons. The aforementioned newsletter, again, it's free. Feel free to subscribe. It's actually through them now. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been pretty low key, is that there's all these things behind the scenes I'm so excited to share with y'all, starting with this episode, but there's a whole lot of other stuff going on. And sometimes you have to get quiet to reorganize what the platform is and what you want to do. And so let's instead of just talking about it, let's get into it. So I'm going to show you what Beehive is. It's always fun when when you try to do the live demo. So hope you guys are ready to have fun with me. We good? Oh my gosh, we're good. Thank heavens. All right. So I'm going to show you what's happening. This is Beehive. I gave you the link, correct? Yeah, you have the link right there. That's my affiliate link. You guys will actually get, I want to say, 30 days free through that link. Check it out. So that's exactly what I did. Shout out to the folks that gave me a link to it. And I was like, I guess I'll check it out. And I was like, oh, no, this is the vibe. Built for growth without complexity. One of the challenges that I had, and you see the link right there. One of the challenges that I had with the previous platforms is that they are really complicated. Not in a bad way, just that, as I mentioned, I have, I don't know, from 700 to 1,000 people that subscribe to my newsletter at this point. So I don't have this gigantic newsletter. It's intimate. The platforms I was working with, they're used by people that literally have millions and millions of people in the newsletter. I had used some of these platforms for years, but I was only using a fraction of their features, number one. And number two, there were so many, it was so big and complex, it didn't quite fit my view of things. This one is super smooth, pardon me, super smooth with the editing. I like it a lot. So there's actually a website that is parallel to the newsletter you send out. So I used to have a newsletter, as y'all know. There wasn't really a good website component, so someone would have to subscribe to read the newsletter. Now there's actually a web component of it. I don't need to design it, it's already there. It's archived, it's organized. The newsletter itself, I love the editing of it. And maybe if you guys can throw it in the chat, but if you in the future, I'm happy to go and do a deep dive and get into the editing software there, but it works really well. And a lot smoother again with the previous ones. The text editor, they talk about it right here with the text editor. You can do the automations, which means if someone signs up to your newsletter at, again, joindamon.me, then they'll get a few automatic emails like, welcome to the community, and here's some resources that might work for you, and those kinds of things. They're starting to integrate AI, which works really well. Excuse me, as far as if you're having challenges with like the text. Referral program, which is the meta thing. That's what I'm talking about here as far as with my link. Here's where it gets interesting. They have things called boosts, which allow you to either pay another newsletter creator to include information about your newsletter in their newsletter. And then as they subscribe to your newsletter, you pay them, say, a quarter or whatever you end up negotiating. But then the reverse, of course, is true too, where if you are comfortable with promoting or sharing someone else's newsletter and getting them subscribers, you can get paid for that as well. Similar to recommendations, though that's not the business part of it. You can actually gate the content, basic subscriber forms, and then you can monetize, which, you know, I love the monetization discussion. You can have a paid newsletter, and they actually have an ad network. If you got my newsletter this morning, that was the first one where it was actually sponsored. It was actually my first sponsored newsletter. Cheers to Bring Your Worth for the first sponsored newsletter. It's from Bay Area Times, which actually visualizes a lot of the technology and shifts that are happening within Silicon Valley, a little bit beyond that. I've liked their work for a while. Sound like a really good sponsor. They're actually part of the Beehive ad network. And so through Beehive, I was able to get the first sponsor for the newsletter again this morning. You can check it out, which has been great. And of course, analysis tools and so forth. Polls, which I just talked about, as well as surveys. Here's my point. If you're going to be building a community, you need to know who the community is. The more layers you have between you and your community, the denser it's going to get. I can stop sharing that now. The denser it's going to get. And whether it's Beehive or someone else, finding some way to directly connect is so important. As we speak, there are massive layoffs happening with my colleagues, directly people that I know that have been laid off. In the media space, major newspapers, major magazines, major TV. I think Paramount's doing layoffs as we speak. Like, just, it's pretty crazy out there.
And so this is kind of that perfect time. You know how I am with the independent thing. This is kind of that perfect time to have that discussion and to say, all right, what are we doing now that allows us to connect directly with the people we're trying to serve versus trying to get permission from folks that might not have our best interests in mind. This is joindamon.me. This is a new website. If you scroll down, of course, you subscribe right there. Check it out. Super clean. And these are the most recent newsletters. And as you see, it comes out every week. Just did the shout out to Nelly. Just did a post, believe it or not, on the rapper Nelly, but it actually connected directly to what I was trying to say. Last week, of course, was a big week. It was actually a week and a half ago with the Grammys. And I did a video on Bring Your Worth TV. You guys might remember it if you've been watching or subscribing for a while, about Tracy Chapman and how she owns her masters and why we should learn from her. And of course, it was a great opportunity to talk about that again. I think I did the video probably about 9 months ago. And so to see her and hear her on the Grammy stage was just heartwarming. And then to also bring up the discussion again about business. That was last week's newsletter. Everything's simple, everything's organized. And now I have a home where it's set up in a certain way, and with the boost and the advertising and other supplements to it, then actually will start to sustain itself. Isn't that what we all want in some form? And so I think that's what's beautiful about it. If you're interested in learning more about Beehive, you can go ahead and click the link right here. I think I still have the link on the screen. See what's happening. And of course, if you want to join Damon, go to joindamon.me. You can join for free and check it out there. All right, today, one other thing, totally forgot about it. How to grow an audience if you have none. Bring Your Worth 325. I want to say it was about 3 or 4 months ago, late last year. Really popular episode as far as the engagement and discussions we had. You'll see the comments once you click on the video. So I think it's about an hour and a half long video where we talk deeper about this. And it's not a live show, it's actually a recorded show. So it's a lot more detailed and a lot more organized as far as, and no smoke in my face in regards to building an audience. Be sure and check it out. If you did not see this episode last year, please check it out. I think you get a lot out of it. All right, today we're talking about how to bring or build, used to bring your worth, build an audience from scratch. If you have any questions, any feedback with you building an audience, you struggling with the audience, you want to expand your audience, throw them in the chat. I'm happy to chat with you, and I'm sure the audience will get a lot out of it too. So the second question I get a lot is, how can I expand your audience? Expand my audience. I think one of the key things you can do, pardon me with my cough. I think one of the key things you can do is actually reach them, is actually reach them where they are. Reach your audience where they are. I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, as founders, particularly as creators, I'm all three, but us creators, we really struggle with this. Where we do some amazing stuff in our basement. We create something from scratch. We get in our head and we write a book. I'm not gonna tell you how long it took to make all these books, but we create these things, and then it's like, we get the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And it's like, no, actually, that movie's fantasy. That's not how it works. How it works is you build something, ideally, with the feedback of the people you're building it for. That's one. The second part of that is that you actually reach those people once it gets done, or once it gets close to being done. You reach them where they are. So back when I spent a lot more time on social media, I would say I'm not on Snapchat because the people that I serve aren't on Snapchat. But I was all on Twitter, the previous incarnation. I left Twitter a while ago. I have a video about it I'll show you guys in a second. But at the time, I'm talking about 2 decades ago, Twitter was a big deal, particularly among us writers, editors who I wanted to work with. Back when I was a full-time journalist, Twitter was the place to be. I'm talking like 2007, 2008. Back when I lived in Silicon Valley, Twitter was the place to be if you were a writer. Now it's not. So I don't need to be there. And it's as simple as that. If you're going to build your audience, you know where your audience already is. Now requires tapping into the people that you know. It requires serving the people, again, that audience of one that you're already starting to connect with. If you're able to build with them, then you're able to get a better idea as far as where they are and how you can connect with them. Now, this one's really different. There's something called 11 Labs. Excuse me, 11 Labs. 11 Labs is working a lot with AI. I'm going to go ahead and it's easier to show than to explain. Let me go ahead and get you guys going. Another presentation. We're going to do it live. Right, 11 Labs. All right. Really simple to read. Generative voice AI. And if you look at the top, the very tippy top, test out our new multilingual speech-to-speech model. Here's what you can do. You can go and say, and I'm not even going to attempt to do the technology because I don't think the sound is going to translate, so I'm not even going to mess with it. Feel free to go there. The link is right there. And I have an affiliate link, so you guys will get a trial with it for free. Here's the basic idea. With this technology, there's two things you can do. The first thing you can do is if you create a video, or I know some of y'all that coach, you're creating newsletters, and some of the discussions we've made is actually, the Washington Post does this, a few of the major folks do this, where they'll have the newsletter, but at the very top, it'll be like a little audio strip, just like the one they have right here on 11 Labs. You press that, and it's someone or something, if it's AI, saying the newsletter. I haven't dabbled on that yet, but maybe you'll see it in the future. Who knows? I know some of y'all that I coach are dabbling in that. That provides a couple things. First of all, it's different because even I'm not doing that yet. Again, I just updated my newsletter, right? So not everybody's doing that. The second thing it does is that it actually allows your newsletter to be more readable because it's audio, and also more accessible because, of course, not everyone can read, or not everyone has the capacity to see the letters. I know folks who have sight challenges, or if they read too much, they get headaches. Audiobooks are for them. That's why audiobooks have become so popular, because it actually makes things more equitable. You could work with 11 Labs. And as you can see, literally just on the front page, I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, welcome to the Bring Your Words show. And I'm going to have it say it in Mandarin Chinese or in Hindi, as some of my relatives speak Hindi. Just like that. So that's one element of that. If we're talking about expanding your audience, if you're watching this, you're likely English speaking, but I know that there's probably about, I wish I can pull up the numbers right now, but I know there's about 10 to 20% of y'all that speak other languages, or the other languages are your primary thing. I'm talking German, I'm talking Hindi, I'm talking Dutch. I guess that's how you pronounce it, Dutch. Every time I hear Dutch, I hear that high U. But that's allowed me, using closed captioning, to connect with more of y'all through BringYourWorth.tv. And nearly every single Bring Your Worth TV episode is in 8 to 16 closed caption languages. This is actually, pardon my French, that next level shit, where it's like, no, we're not just going to have the closed captioning in other languages. We're actually going to have the speaking in other languages. 11 Labs allows you to use different voices to match that particular thing. And then the second part, as I mentioned at the top, the new multilingual speech-to-speech model. In other words, you could be the one that's actually speaking it and going to different languages. I think it's beta testing as far as having the right intonations and making it sound like you, but there are massive opportunities here if you want to do that. Mr. Beast, who's an extremely popular YouTuber, has been implementing these type of technologies for a while. So have other, million subscriber, tens of million subscribers in this case, folks. This is something that's available to you now. It's available to us now. I've been dabbling with AI for the last couple of years, getting deeper into what's available there. I've been looking and curious about this type of technology for probably about a year and a half. I knew it was coming, but now it's here. I don't know what this means for the channel, but I do know that it's a great opportunity if you're like, hey, I want to reach as many people as possible, and English isn't even the number one spoken language in the world. I want to say it's Mandarin Chinese, or I think they just call it traditional Chinese, and then I think it's Hindi, if I remember correctly, perhaps a subset of Hindi. Then it's English. So even if you have an English speaking channel, even if you have an English written newsletter, if you want to expand your audience, you're like, I feel like I've tapped out, this is a great opportunity to do so. Again, you can use my link. It's try11labs.io, and then all the gobbledygook after that. Just click on the link. You don't have to do it. Please don't write it down. Just click on the link. Again, it's a referral link, and through my special offer, you'll be able to get a trial and check it out. And they have a super basic trial on the website. So just go to the website and do that super basic trial just to hear what it sounds like and how it works. But if you want to go deeper, definitely use my link. And I'm happy to hook you up and see what else you can do. All right. Ooh, tea time. Hello. And then one of my favorite shows that I did, I want to say I did it about a year ago, Why You Do Not Need More Press. Listen, I have 2 degrees in journalism, master's in magazine publishing. Been a journalist longer than I've been anything else. Still a journalist. You'll catch my articles. Even I'm saying, no, press isn't going to help you. And I've been a successful entrepreneur, sold my startup a few years ago. Press was good, but what got us sold was the audience. We had 250,000 users. That hits different. Us being on the cover of the Wall Street Journal sounds good, but that's not what gave us our success. This video, and I want to say it's probably about 10 minutes long, it's not that long. I break down, I think it's 3 reasons why you actually don't need more press to, in this case, build your audience. You don't. There's so many people I talked to, even recently, where they're in the major business magazines. I have a column with Inc. magazine. I know folks that write for Forbes and, again, WSJ. And they'll get these beautiful write-ups, even like TechCrunch or some of the more perhaps nerdier, if you want to call it that, Silicon Valley publications. And they'll get these write-ups, and other people who are doing exactly what you're trying to do, like other entrepreneurs or creators, will be excited about it. But it won't necessarily build the community they're trying to serve. Does that make sense? So if I tell a fellow journalist, yo, I was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, they'll be like, oh my God, that's fantastic. If I tell someone who I'm trying to sell a book to, God, sell a book. Yeah, I was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. It's like, okay, that's nice. So how's this book serve me? It doesn't matter, to be blunt about it. It doesn't matter. It ends up being what the kids call it today, clout. It's just clout. In this one, I talk about why it's clout, and then I talk about what you should be doing instead, which flows right into our conversation today. I'm really excited about it. Happy to share it with y'all. And hope it gives you some good insight. All right, so today we're talking about quite a few things. It's always good to be back live. I haven't been live in, I don't think, this year. So it's good to reconnect with y'all. Today we're talking about building an audience from scratch. We're going to wrap up in about 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, be sure and throw them in the chat. All right. And the question, which is a little bit beyond this, but I had to touch on it because we have those discussions all the time with my coaching clients and all that. How do I maintain an audience? Again, I hit 18,000 last summer, 18,000 last summer or last fall. And it's been steady since then. And the question is, how do you stay steady? Like, you can get up there, but it could drop real quick. And that's I think a really good question. I think the main thing you have to do, you might see a pattern here, is go for the engagement, not for the numbers, which might sound weird. It's like, okay, well, you want the high numbers, sure. But if they're not engaged, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's like the old saying, if you're on a social media platform and you have 10 million followers, that sounds great. But if you have 2 followers and one of the followers is Bill Gates, another one is, say, Oprah Winfrey, then it's apples and oranges. You can't compare that. I'll take the 2 influencers who can connect with my audience and I can connect with their audience versus the 10,000 or whatever any day. That should be the energy that you have. Focus on the engagement. Again, if you have 10, 20, 30 people who are really rocking with your stuff, when you have a book coming out, they're going to be grabbing it. When you're doing a live, they're going to be watching. When you have a new thing that you're trying to do, they're going to be in your corner. And ideally, you'll be in theirs, depending on the service that you do. That is worth its weight in gold. That's the audience that's your baseline. They're not going anywhere. Those are, I don't like the word fans. Those are the people that are dedicated to the work that you do because you're dedicated to serving them. That's what your focus should be on. That said, the next tool, which I've been a fan of for years, shout out to them, and I love the work that Laura, the founder, is doing. Some of us have to be connected to other platforms, including social media. I rock with LinkedIn. That's pretty much it. You can catch me at joindamon.me. You can catch me at bringyourworth.tv, which is Meta because you're watching it right now. You can catch me on LinkedIn, more for business purposes. That's really it. A little bit of TikTok, that's more fun for me. If you have to be engaged with social media, though, find a way to make it manageable and find a way to connect with your audience despite all the noise. Meet Edgar is superb at this. I've been a paid patron user community. Feels like more like a community for years. I'm gonna say like 6 years, 7 years. My youngest kid is 8 years old, and I'm thinking like I joined around the time he was born, or almost 8. So it's been a long time. Meet Edgar works like this. Oh, I have another presentation. I forgot. I'm busy just yapping. Here we go. Can do it live. This is Meet Edgar. This is how it works. And I think you can see some of the schedule there. There you go. That's a perfect place to look. So what you do is you pre-package all your content. You go and say, okay, I have in my case with Bring Your Worth TV, I have a video that talks about quitting social media. That's evergreen. That means people will watch it forever. It's not time sensitive. And I want to make sure that it's shared, in my case on LinkedIn and a couple other platforms, but mostly LinkedIn. I want to make sure it's shared on LinkedIn regularly because there are going to be people that see it when I first post it. But of course, down the line, a month from now, there's going to be a whole new set of people that might get in front of their eyes because of the algorithm, timing, whatever. Or maybe they weren't ready at that time, but they're ready to watch it now. I put into Meet Edgar. You can see the neat categories right there. And I put into the category, in my case, of like full-length Bring Your Worth episodes. Then I set up a schedule and say, like 7 a.m. my time every morning, go ahead and post something on LinkedIn. And it could be anyone from this batch. And suddenly I don't have to be on LinkedIn posting all the time or whatever your flavor of platform. Suddenly it's posting for me. And I happen to have evergreen content, so it works. I'm starting to do that with my newsletter. So my newsletters are pretty much evergreen. So the joindamon.me, those newsletters are starting to go into that cycle. So people are starting to get exposed to those things. It allows you to get away from social media because your stuff being posted as it is. And it also allows you to spend more time building your actual community. If I was worried about doing stuff on social media, I wouldn't have the time to go live with y'all for almost an hour. If I was busy on social media, I wouldn't be making the books or doing the stuff behind the scenes or connecting with y'all on Moxie or whatever. Like, I literally wouldn't have the time. I wouldn't have the time to have a coaching practice. I would just be doing stuff. If you're starting to feel burnt out as far as building a community, or more importantly, maintaining a community, social media might be part of the problem because we can mistake social media engagement for building a community. And I would argue very passionately those are two separate things. Sometimes they overlap, but eventually you have to build your own community. And as I've talked about a lot over the past 3 years that the Bring Your Worth TV show has been on, if you don't own the pipeline, then you're in trouble. If Facebook decides your content's not looking good, or they want to charge you more to reach your audience, they can do that in a Thanos snap. Same thing for X or whatever it's called now. Same thing for TikTok, any of them. And LinkedIn included, for sure. The thing is that you have the newsletters, you have the TV show, you have the one-on-one engagement. Again, I've been meeting some of y'all in person over the past month, and y'all come through to Vegas. That's different. There's no platform that can take that away. That can't be demonetized. The algorithm can't lose that. Shout out to Brendan over at Creative Nonfiction. But the algorithm can't lose that. It can't lose that. This is a way for you to stay ahead of that, so you're not working for the algorithm. That is my big soapbox on that. Thank you very much. Rock with Meet Edgar, female founder, Laura Roeder. I think that's her last name. Roader, I believe. Fantastic. I got a chance to connect with her years ago. Love the work that you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. Meet Edgar could be the cure to that if you need to show up on social media. Oh, and you know where I was going next. How to quit social media, your step-by-step guide. Listen, to build an audience, you do not need social media. Let me say that for the people in the back. To build an audience, you do not need social media. This video starts, and it's actually a compilation of a few videos. This video starts with me deleting my Instagram as well as deleting my Twitter/X account. Live. There it is. It's not for fanfare, whatever. I'm trying to make it clear to you. You can have a sustainable business, independent business, without social media. In fact, I found that my business has thriven, whatever the past tense is, thriven over the years as I've let some of the social media go. Because I stopped putting my energy into the respective platforms. Instead, I started putting my energy into you, into Bring Your Worth TV, into JoinDamon.me, into Moxie, who I'm partnering with. That's where I'm putting my energy into. I'm not trying to get more likes or more follows over here. My energy is just on y'all. That's what I was able to do 7-8 books in the past 7 years. So I'm not trying to get the social media clout. That's really building an audience. That audience of 18,000 of y'all wasn't built on social media. It was built on constant engagement, week after week after week. So after 250 so episodes, a lot of y'all started to understand what I was trying to do and how I was trying to serve you. And we found each other. That's a wonderful place to end on. Fantastic. Thanks for listening and for some of these questions that I got earlier. I appreciate y'all. If you want to go deeper into this, remember the different suggestions, how to grow an audience. If you have none, please check that out. It's a great follow-up to this one. Why you don't need more press. This is coming from a journalist. Keep that in mind. And as we just talked about, how to quit social media, your step-by-step guide. Yeah. Whew. Yeah, with social media, that time of building communities in that way, I think that era might be over. So it might not be the time to continue or to set up your camp there right now. Complete Bring Your Worth collection is out there. If you're watching on Amazon, you click the link. You can go and check it out on Bring Your Worth TV for free on the audiobook. Until next time, remember you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. I almost forgot my saying. I'm so rusty at this live thing. I love y'all and I appreciate it. Keep the faith and take care.